being either raised from the dead or a near-death experience. So she had spotted him in church a couple times, and then she said, and then before you know it, he was sitting next to me. So I asked this lady just the other day, so where did you go for dates? And she told me, to church, of course. Well, 7 years ago, Don and Velma celebrated their 50th anniversary. And my dad fell in love with my mother and loved her every single day of his life. And that is what I call being faithful. When we came out of Cuba in 1960, we came out basically with what we could get in suitcases. We made our way to Canada and applied for visas to live in the United States. We were legal immigrants, but we were very, very poor. My dad was willing to do anything to support and feed his family. As I think back on what he went through and how hard he worked, I am filled with awe and wonder at just how much he did love us. He didn't have a job, so he would go looking for work by just driving around and going up to people's houses and asking them if they wanted their houses painted. You can imagine how difficult that is with people telling them no so many times. I remember that the local corner store was giving us credit, and my parents were under a lot of pressure. I remember my dad found out that grocery stores would give away the produce that was no longer fresh and suitable for sale in the stores. And he would go around and regularly ask for it. I remember later on when he did get some jobs, some regular jobs, he would work for some very ungrateful paint contractors who were never happy with his production no matter how hard he worked. And he always worked very hard to support his family and to supplement the ministry. I don't think he had a lazy bone in his body, and I believe that he just worked his body and just wore his body out working. And that's what I call being faithful. My dad was a great father, a great son, a great brother, a great husband, and a great friend to many. And he had this natural disposition that made him just universally loved by everybody he met. He made friends wherever he went and many of them became lifelong friends. And then I heard it said that he was a saint. And if anyone ever deserved to go to heaven, it was he. But I want to say this morning that Don would be the first one to take exception to that statement, because he was not just a faithful man, but he was also a man of faith. It was the Spirit of God that lived him and permeated every aspect of his life that made him the kind of a man that he was. He was faithful, but he was also a man of faith. And one of the things I loved about my dad is he was quick. So you may wonder, well, how was he quick? Out in the West, And in Texas, there is a history and an appreciation of men who were quick. Right? They could draw a gun real quick, and they could shoot straight. But that's not the way my dad was quick. My dad was the quickest in the north, south, east, and west to pray. In the time that it would take others time to say that they were going to pray, or that they were going to pray, he'd already prayed. Right then, in whatever situation he was in, he was ready to pray. And he did not give up easily in prayer. He was persistent and devoted in daily prayer. And not only that, but he had faith that God was going to answer those prayers. Dad had great faith that God was in control. Not too long ago, he was up on the roof. He was inspecting the roof because he knew he had some problems in the roof. And he fell through the roof. Well, I got on to him about that, and I said, Dad, you need to stay on the ground. Then not too long ago, I heard he'd been climbing step ladders again. And I told him, Dad, you need to stay on the ground. And he said, David, do you think it's God's will that I fall off this ladder and get killed? I said, no. He said, well, I'm going to get on the ladder. And that's the kind of faith that he had, that God was always in control. And that's just the way he lived his life. I have another little story I want to tell you that made a great impression upon me. When he was painting, we were living in Fort Lauderdale, and he was painting, and he had a co-worker who was going through a lot in his life. I think he was bitter and angry, and he's one of these kind of guys that just want to start something with you, you know, harass you, and just acting real mean. And one day he said, Don, I am going to beat you up. And my dad, he got a little bit mad at the thought of that. And he climbed down off that ladder where he was working, and he said, Perry, I want you to forgive me. But he says, I got a little bit mad when you started in like that, but I want you to forgive me because I got mad at you. But he says, all I want to do is really, I just want to pray with you, and I want, to help you with all your problems that you got. Well, that was when Dad cut his knees right out from under him, and that man went down and started to pray. He gave his life to Jesus Christ and was in church with us the next Sunday. He had a big heart. Dad was a humble man. He was a man who sacrificed for others. He loved people and he loved God. And at a very early age, he learned a simple yet profound truth. And I know that if he were here today, he would want everybody here to learn it and live it. 1 John 5:12 says, he that hath the Son hath life, and he that hath not the Son hath not life. So if you want that kind of life, it's available to you today. And it's not just about the life to come. It's about your life that you live here on this earth, here and now.